Yes, we're now joined by survivor, performer, star Debra Byrne, who is touring around, coming to Ballarat, Her Majesty's, Bendigo, the capital, and the Fairfax studio in Melbourne, doing a show kind of with Jerry Lee Lewis.
Yeah, fortunately not the real one.
No,
it's with Nick Barker actually, but no one really is anyone. We just represent the people and we talk about the people, and Rosetta Tharpe, I think, is the greatest discovery I've had.
Who is Sister Rosetta Tharpe?
Well, she's called the Gospel of the God Mother of Gospel, and she had a huge influence on Jerry Lee Lewis. He actually played piano in her gospel band in her church. She was the choir leader, and Elvis Presley adored her. Johnny Cash, all these people were really influenced by her because she took gospel into kind of this thing, this rock, that they all went, whoa, this is really cool. But unfortunately, a lot of the churches didn't think it was so cool. But she took, she did what Christ said, take the music, take the word out of the church, and she did that. But she did it in a way that really influenced rock and roll.
So this isn't a tribute show to Jerry Lee Lewis?
No.
Okay, so what is it?
It's a story about his life,
yeah,
and we tell the story about his life, and it's a rather tumultuous life. And I look at, I've got to say, I wasn't attracted to the show because I have this adoring, love of Jerry Lee Lewis, because I don't. I've always found him to be a quite unlikable man.
How come?
I think the way he plays the piano for me, I've always, whenever I've seen him, I thought, you're not playing, you're raping. He's always had this really highly aggressive, and his life has been very much that. So my instincts about the man were quite right, which is unusual for me because I've never had a really good. I haven't had such a good track record with that. But yeah, so.
Let's go down that.
No, let's not go down there.
So what got you over the hurdle? If you have this kind of,
a good story is a good
repellent
story.
Attitude to Lewis.
He's still a great performer. He's
yeah.
still an extraordinary musician, and it's still a good story. I mean, why did I do Les Mis? It wasn't because I thought, everybody in the piece was a nice guy. In fact, the reason you play these parts and roles is because they are real. They're real life. People are good and bad and ugly and pretty.
It's whether they're compelling or not, I guess. Yeah.
I think Jerry Lee Lewis is rather compelling. But the one thing for me that was such a nice thing, I'm 56, so when I hear something I've never heard before and I hear it really good, it's great. You're re-inspired. And Rosetta Tharpe sings and plays the guitar like no other woman I've heard, and I can see why she was such an amazing influence, and the way she sings the gospel is just beautiful, really extraordinary.
This must have been a pretty strong draw for you,
the
is
gospel.
The gospel, because I've been reading some interviews you've been doing recently and so on, and you talk a lot about your faith.
Yeah.
When did that arrive for you?
Well, it arrived when I was a child.
But then it disappeared.
But then it was kind of, pushed out of my life by the way of the Bible study teacher, who was more a pedophile than a Christian. Whew. Anyway.
So we're talking Christianity.
Things like that happen in church. We know that, don't we?
We sure do.
We sure do, unfortunately.
So you've returned to Christianity.
Yeah, and I always wanted to.
Yeah.
I really did always wanted to. And I always, and I think I said this in the interview, Bonnie Raitt sings this beautiful song called Longing in My Heart.
Yeah.
And that's what I used to always feel, especially if I was singing on Carols by Candlelight or something like that. And I've always been attracted to songs that do that to you. It's always been something that I've yearned for, is to have that feeling. And whenever I sang Softly and Tenderly, Jesus is Calling, it was just this beautiful ache, but a good ache, a really yummy one. And eventually I, thought that that's where I wanted to go. And that's where I went, and I've, been sailing.
Yeah. It strikes me that there are as many Christs as there are Christians. whether you go to the Westboro Baptist Church in America, the people who picketed Heath Ledger's funeral because he played a gay man in Brokeback Mountain, or whether you go to the nice end of Christianity with Tim Costello or whatever. Who's your Jesus?
My Jesus is a beautiful, loving man who has nothing but love for us. He doesn't judge. He's a great teacher. He teaches humanity. He teaches compassion. He teaches faith, loyalty. He teaches friendship. He teaches all the things that I find are greatly lacking in our society.
Are you allied to
in
a
our
particular
community.
church or a particular branch of Christianity?
I tend to go towards the Pentecostal church because they really like to sing a good gospel song.
Do you find the Pentecostals are big on compassion and charity? And and not being
well, my
judgmental?
particular church in Werribee is. They're a very compassionate church.
Because the reputation
and
is kind of the other way.
they do a lot of outreach work. They do a lot of community work, and I love that when churches really, really are part of the community and really helping the community. And I don't mean that they're going out there and expecting everybody to come to church, but the church goes to them and helps them in whatever needs they have to live a happier life.
But
to
not
live
as a
healthier
trade-off,
life.
as in
Certainly not
there's
as a
a
trade-off.
meal here
Jesus never trades.
if you'll come in
Yeah.
for the lesson.
That's not being compassionate.
That's how a lot of organisations have started
Absolutely,
to do it,
and
though,
that's
isn't it?
not what compassion is. Compassion is to just, to give,
Selflessly.
to help wherever you can, for nothing, and that's the beauty. That's the Jesus I love. The Jesus that, that's what grace is. The love of God is not earned; it is given. And that's how church should be in our community. You should give it without expecting anything back.
But I do see a very strong vein of punishment in the Pentecostal talk.
Oh, really?
Oh, yeah. Social ills down to lack of faith kind of thing.
Social ills down to lack of faith. I haven't heard that one.
Bushfires sometimes.
Oh, no,
you're
no,
talking
no,
about Danny the Liar and all of that.
Oh, no,
nonsense.
no,
Not
no.
just Danny the Liar.
No, we don't have that feeling in our church at all. We don't bother with any of that.
That was the reason we
no.
had the bushfires, is because of the Victorian government's decision to pass laws about abortion. I mean, that was widely condemned at the time.
That is not our church speaking.
No, he's
and
right
if
out
it
there on his
were,
own.
I'd be walking out of my church.
Sure. But, Deborah, I mean, we were talking with Ian before about the creative process. In his area, it's design.
Yeah.
In your area, it's performance and music. Where does creativity come from for you? And please don't tell me it's something that comes from religion, because
I don't believe in
I don't
religion.
think that.
I don't believe in religion at all. I don't like religion. I don't like what religion does to how you feel about something.
Despite everything you've just said.
But that's not religion. That's faith. And faith isn't religion.
So religion to you is
religion to me is
religion's
something people
the structures
create.
of the churches, which you're rejecting. Okay, but where does creativity, where does that come from for you? Because all your working life of now
comes from the
a few
heart.
years,
Comes from love. Comes from the heart. Comes from the spirit of a human being. I don't think it's an intellectual thing. I've never been an intellectual, and I get scared when I'm amongst them because my vocab doesn't kind of add up.
but you're a great survivor, and there were periods of time, pretty dark times.
I'm a very intelligent person with not a great education. And I think my creativity, a lot of it has come from my life. And I was born with these gifts. I was born to be able to sing. I was born to be able to dance. I've got a body that's been able to, coordinate itself well.
But you've pushed yourself.
But my passion
Yeah.
has been the thing that has driven me to be a better performer. My love of what I do. I know a lot of people who can sing. I know a lot of people who can dance, but they don't necessarily love it. They don't wake up and need to do it, And as a child, that's what I did.
So
I woke up.
It's partly, I mean, I wonder if that's actually, in other people's terms, that's ego that drives them. Ian, what do you reckon?
I'm not. I had this conversation yesterday about ego, and I think the most creative people in any kind of way, shape, or form, I think you have to have not a selfishness, or even a self-obsession, but you need to be sort of self-orientated,
Absolutely.
and the ego comes into it, that you need to have the confidence to do what you do, and also believe that somebody else might be interested in what you do. Otherwise,
and share in this experience with you, I think is really important.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I think if you go on stage, if I go and do a talk, if I create a piece of design that's going to be seen by an unknown public or an unknown audience, or you get on stage or something, you need to kind of be a certain kind of person where there's no sort of doubt that or there might be a self-doubt, or you might not be sort of arrogantly confident, but you need to be able to get over that question of, are people going to be interested to see me?
Am I worth listening to?
Am I worth listening to?
People burn out when they don't have a talent for having talent.
Yeah.
It's not enough to be talented. You have to have alongside of it.
You have to know how to exercise it.
To maintain it, to look after it. That's where the selfishness comes in.
And that can work in different ways. It can be on one end of the scale, it can be that you think people need to hear what you want to say. And on the other end of the scale, it can be that I don't really care what people think about what I'm going to say because I want to say it, And I don't mean I don't care as in a lack of responsibility about what you're saying or what you're doing, but that point that kind of an awareness that there will be people that love what you do and people that hate what you do, and there will be people that won't be interested at all in what you do or won't even be aware of what you do. But it doesn't matter. That shouldn't stop you doing it if you want to do it.
And you've got to get that pendulum just in the right place, don't you? Because if it goes too far one way, it's indulgence. If it goes too fast the other way, it's irrelevance.
Yeah. Some jazz pianists kind of do that, I think, sometimes. 12-minute piano solo tends to be indulgent to me. I want to hear some of the other music in the other band, and I think sometimes... Might
be, but Keith Jarrett can grip me for half an hour.
Well, absolutely. But you know what, I'm just answering what you said about that indulgence. Sometimes it can be like, that was fabulous, and now we'd like to move on. And I think a good artist knows when to move on.
But I think nothing exists without context, does it? So that if you've got someone like Keith Jarrett, kind of someone who is predisposed to like what Keith Jarrett does, will have a very different sense of what indulgence is to someone who prefers 3 minutes sort of songs with melodies and things.
Yeah.
And I think that so. I always try to avoid kind of absolutes of kind of like what is indulgence and what isn't, or what is. I don't know. I just think it's...
Well, look at, for instance, Apple, Steve Jobs, all of that. There was a guy who, for how long, by how many supposed experts, was told that he was completely wasting his time and it was never going to work. And yet, if there's one emblematic design success of recent times, that's it.
Yeah.
So you can't listen to the market. You can't listen to the experts. You've got to trust your instincts somewhere and go for it, don't you? Otherwise, we all end up the same.
Yeah, and that one thing when I talk to young emerging artists, of whatever it is they're doing, I said, if it's not coming out of you naturally, then don't do it. Don't try and push something out of you that is just really uncomfortable.
Well, he's a professional provocateur.
We were talking earlier about mentoring, and I mean, you're not uniquely, but you must be part of a very small club in Australia of people whose lives have been lived very much in public. The spotlight on and off you, but very much in public and from a very, very young age. So that must give you some insights to offer young performers.
Oh, yeah.
Like what?
Be true. Just be real. Don't try and fit with what other people think is what you are. If it's not feeling right, don't push it. I mean, I think as I grew up, I got so confused as an artist and as a young woman trying to shape myself.
Were you doing other people's bidding rather
because
than
I was
own?
doing songs that when I hate that song, I can't sing that song. And a classic,
like which ones?
Oh, a classic example, and I really enjoyed writing this in the book. It felt like revenge, really. It's like, finally I get to talk about this. I was doing the Graham Kennedy show. I was 15. Firstly, I was dressed in something that my little sister was wearing from Myers, so they always dressed you. Not that I didn't think the dress was nice. I just thought it was a little young for me and a bit tight round the arms, everything always felt a bit like, this is just not being right.
This is what, mid-60s?
And this song called Top of the World by the Carpenters was one of my most hated songs of the time. And I've never been a big fan, Ian, of verse, chorus, verse, chorus, verse, chorus. I've always liked to tell a story, even when I was a kid. So Top of the World was a typical da-da-da-da, and now we're in the chorus, da-da-da-da, and now we're in the chorus. And I loathed the song. It didn't mean anything to me. It was a big hit, unfortunately, so, young talent time, that's where we were going to be singing that. And that's what they wanted me to sing on the Graham Kennedy show. And my brain wouldn't take in the words. Now I've got a good brain, and I had a better brain back then for remembering things. But if I don't like something, it's like my brain won't take it in. It only takes in little bits of it. It would only take in the chorus, and the rest of the song just remained so vague to me. And I'm there, and all I could sing was, something in the wind, and there's the wind. And there's something, and I sold this wind factor through the first verse with such commitment and terror, and then I'd get to the chorus. I'm on the top of the world, and then I'd give it all I could give it, and knowing that I was going into that other Zorb place again, into the second verse, that I didn't know any better than the first, and it was all about wind. And it was horrible, and I walked off, and it was
Singer's
live.
nightmare.
This is live
television.
TV,
Yeah.
I walk off, and Leslie Shaw, the producer, and someone else who was there, they looked at me like, what have you just done? And I wanted to scream at them. I was like, no, you did this. You did this. I told you I hated this song. I told you I felt so uncomfortable.
But you were just a kid.
But you were just a kid, and you just zipped.
Yeah.
You just zipped, and you took it, and you took the fall, and you took the shame. And I will always tell kids, don't do something that won't work from you. It's got to work from you. It's got to come out of you naturally.
Ian, have you got an equivalent example? Taking on a job you wished you'd never taken because your heart wasn't in it?
Not off the top of my head. I haven't, but I agree that the sense that you should always do something. Everybody that works in any creative area should always do something sort of either not from the heart or from your own experience. But writers will always say a great book is something you've written from experience. It's not something that you can There's that whole sense of from some kind of existentialist kind of point of view, but there's that sort of sense that you can't ever know, you can't ever imagine something that you don't already know. And you do science fiction, there's that kind of sense.
I'm not sure. I'd tell writers, because the pat piece of advice is write what you know.
Other way around, isn't it?
I always tell them to write what they don't know.
Yeah, you've got to imagine
because it's
what you don't know.
curiosity that will spark the next. Is about imagination. Otherwise, you're talking about reporting, aren't you? Nothing wrong with reporting.
No, I'm talking about not necessarily sort of from experience, but the way that kind of you can your communication will be more credible if you have a sort of a greater sense of what you're writing about. That doesn't say that don't have a flight of fantasy.
Yeah.
Or the science fiction writers. You don't say, well, you can't write about going to Saturn because you haven't been.
Yeah.
But there's a sense that the experiences that those people that went on this imaginary mission to Saturn, they would be ordinary people, and you can write about their experiences.
Yes.
So that it's the human condition. So it's not the actual story.
Setting.
It's that thing. And I also think the other thing that for me is really important is how you kind of judge success on a creative level, and in terms of kind of success on someone else's terms, whether that's actually success or whether it's actually failure, and whether you're better off failing on your own terms,
Being true to yourself.
Samuel Beckett had it best. He said, "Fail and then fail better."
Well, I like Quentin Crisp. Is it? If at first you don't succeed, maybe fail is your style.
In which case, own it, make it your own.
Yeah, be true to it.
Sell it.
Yeah,
Yeah,
that's true, isn't it?
go. Yeah, I'm really not sure what success is. I think if you are doing something and you're doing it well, and you the response from whoever it is that's watching it, and it's kind of weird too, because when we were talking about ego and success, some of my best times are actually in rehearsal without an audience, because it's that coming together with many different creative people that and you get inspired and you exchange things and you try out stuff and you create relationships with new musicians or new directors, and that for me is sometimes some of the most fruitful
Collaboration.
places I've ever been in. Bringing the audience into that, or that's the next layer. Sometimes it's like I have to move away from my family of what's on stage with me, because I then have to bring in the audience, and you're then feeling a little split between what you need to give to the audience and what you have with your band or with the other. Do you know what I mean?
Sure,
it's
sure.
like
But success
you're
is...
moving out. You're sort of extending your lounge room a bit, and you've got to make space for that. And
Success is having fun and still being able to look at yourself in the mirror the next morning.
I can look at myself
Being
in
able
the
to
mirror.
find the mirror the next morning.
Yeah? No.
Open your eyes.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, that's your world. That's not hers.
That's not mine.
Deborah, congratulations. I described
bless
you as
you.
a survivor, and that, amongst many other things, is what you are. Ian Anderson, our other guest here, from one of the founders of the Designers Republic. Michael Gurr, my co-host on The Conversation Hour today. Thank you all for coming. This has been The Conversation Hour on your ABC.